So I just want to tell you a bit of a story really about myself and my journey and why I end up doing what I do and what a joy it's been to do it. I just want to walk a little bit into my past, the last 30 years, which has kind of determined why I do what I do. So for 30 years I've been working in the public sector, but before that I was chair of a health food co-op in Tottenham, the Bear. Many of you will have eaten there or bought food there or whatever else it was. And that was fabulous because we were mainly, you know, single mums doing our stuff, not with the right load of money, but giving a damn about tomorrow and the quality of food that we're passing over to our kids. And at the same time, while we had a few hours spare, I ended up being the leader of the council, and then I ended up being the chair of the hospital trust, and then I ended up being on the original board of Yorkshire Forward, and then I happened to be something in Europe, and then I ended up being the chair of the Forestry Commission via the Countryside Agency in Natural England. And the only reason I mention all that is that's 30 years of understanding how people think that aren't me, and it's 30 years of knowing that people that might, in some quarters, be frowned upon or criticised are actually as keen to deliver a better world for tomorrow than anybody else. They're just constrained by a system that isn't really letting them let their hair down. And the third aspect of living that last 30 years was I kind of know how things work. You know, and I kind of know that negativity doesn't work, that working in a system that isn't driven by shared values of kindness and respect and tolerance, it's broke. And that today, though they hide it extremely well, many people that are working in significant areas of responsibility know in their heart of hearts and are demoralised by the fact that there's something seriously wrong with the way that we're doing things, the way that we're investing, the way that we're using land, the way that we are educating, the way that we are delivering health, whatever. There's something wrong with that. But as Mary would have said if she was on this stage, you know, there's no point in whinging about that. There's every point in rolling up your sleeves and seeing what you're actually going to do to make a difference with that. And that's really the heart of why Incredible Edible was started. And that's really the heart of why with Pennine Prospects and its partnership, we're going to deliver the first socially purposed people's park for the South Pennines. And I just want to share a little bit about that vision. Because it's not that I'm extraordinary or I know a heck of a lot or I've got degrees in right, left and centre. It's just that I am old enough to know that I don't have to worry too much about the next 50 years of my life, but I do need to worry about the next 50 years of my daughter's life. And I happen to think that shared passion for creating something for a generation that, you know, feels a bit let down by us is something that should drive us all every day of our lives to do whatever we can to make a difference and to change that. So 10 years ago, and it was 10 years ago, whilst listening to Tim Lang talk about the state of the planet, and we all understand we've lived through Rio, we've lived through Kyoto, we've lived through Copenhagen, we lived through all those things when the world was promised to us and then nothing happened as far as I'm concerned, except a lot of squabbles about detail which actually didn't deliver any difference on the ground. Having lived through all that and having been at a conference where I was reminded of that, and that, you know, this, as they say, is not a dress rehearsal, I got on a train in London and I invented this idea called Incredible Edible. And it was a really simple idea, which was, hey, what's the missing chair around the table? People. You know, I hear the strategists, I hear the policymakers, I hear the researchers and academics. I've got all that lot, and they play a part in the future. I see the technology, I get, you know, the new way of communicating, and, you know, we'll be able to drive cars that don't use petrol, and we'll be able to heat our houses. I get that. But actually, if all we do with that is allow the people in the middle to continue to live the sort of lives that they're already living, sharing the same sort of disrespect for a resource, then we haven't really changed the right way, have we? So ultimately, I thought, how are we going to create a system? How are we going to create an experiment where people around the table, respected, trusted, listen to. How are we going to do that? Well, we could go and hug a tree and hope for the best and stuff like that, and it is all based on dreams, because that was an experiment and I had no idea if it was going to work. But it seemed to me the one thing that we needed to do was to just, in the place we called home, find a common currency that we could all start to act around and do something. Just stop talking about it, do something. And the common currency seemed to me blindingly obvious. It was food. You know, I've sat in lots of rooms with lots of wet towels on heads and all the rest of it about the state of the future. And many of those issues go way over the heads of so many people who give a damn about their kids but don't know where to start. They're technical. There are issues about peak oil. There are issues about, you know, all sorts of words that are not familiar to them. And yet, with food, there was a doorway in, a Trojan horse in, to demonstrating on the ground, using our own gifts and not chasing money. A different approach to place, a different approach to resource use, a different approach to community across the piece. So, on a simple serviette, and I always say this because it's a goddamn truth, I had a little serviette, I was on a virgin train, it couldn't be a complicated model, so it ended up being Incredible Edible. And an Incredible Edible says, if you put local food at the heart of your community spaces, very visibly, not places where you can't see stuff, but food growing in the middle of your towns, your villages, your neighbourhoods, your boroughs. And if you work out who in that community might know how to do stuff, use it, cook it, grow it, process it, whatever, and if at the same time you start to, with your interest in local food, you're growing it, you're cooking it, you're sharing skills, start to support your local market, recognising, I'm an economist, you get the economy, you spend your money on, that's all there is to it. So if you use your pound in your pocket, if you're fortunate enough to have one, in your local market, instead of in the supermarket, not against supermarkets, but you know, maybe thinking about where that stuff came from, and if it flew on the other side of the planet and it's in a plastic bag, is it necessarily going to be the sticky money that I want in my local economy, in my local town? If you do those three things together, find the one plate that you want to operate with, not the lot, and just go for it, using your gifts, not waiting for permission, not waiting for a check through the door, not whinging with somebody else that it has to be somebody else's responsibility, just doing it. It seemed to me, knowing that people can be magnificent when challenged, we might be onto something. So I got off a train and I went to see Mary, and I said, Mary, you up for doing this? And she said, oh, all right, yeah. And we cracked on 10 years ago. And what we did was blindingly obvious. This was all about sharing, respect, not following the sort of critique that so many people in community development do, but just getting out there and thinking, that's a horrible bit of land there, why don't we plant food on it? Not asking permission to do that, obviously, because it's a dog toilet. And I'm going to clean it up, and I'm going to use the seeds in my bottom drawer, and I'm going to make it great, and I'm going to put a sign in there that says food to share, because we need a conversation. We'll call it a propaganda garden. We'll get people talking to complete strangers around food. Would it work? I didn't know. Yeah, it does. It worked because it was different, it was accessible, it showed almost an immediate difference, and it demonstrated that people were interested in their spaces and their places, but nobody had ever had a conversation with them about it before. And then the second plate was, you know, how are we going to teach people to do that because they've forgotten? Now, you know, what is the point of expecting people to grow lots of stuff in an allotment if nobody's ever taught them how to cook the blooming stuff? So obviously the thing to do is to get a tent that will go, you just have to think savvily, this isn't rocket science. Get a tent that goes up and down really fast. Rack up on a street, don't ask permission, start to cook local food, start to give it out, tell people how to do it, start that buzz again. You never know what's going to happen, and the school cook gets involved, and then the guy at the town hall gets involved, and all manner of people get involved. And you know, in that propaganda garden, the really interesting thing was, if we had asked the local council, there'd have been a problem. Maybe. But the local council, wonderfully, within 9 months of us changing that dog toilet into a herb garden, put a bench in there and started to mow it. Because the local government people are, you know, on message with this. It's just they are a little bit constrained. And then the third element of Incredible Edible, which makes it kind of a little bit different from community gardening, is there has to be a job in it. There has to be apprenticeships in it. There has to be people being prepared to be the urban farmers of tomorrow. Or else why would anybody, hard-pressed, doing 2 jobs, cleaning and God, why would they bother to listen to you? But if there's a chance that their children may be able to do worthwhile, respected jobs in the future, as market traders, as farmers, as landscape architects, whatever, well, they're going to listen. And that's the type of traction that you need. Because around that kind of whizziness is some of the stuff that you've been talking about today. That people wanting to support local businesses, that people interested in the provenance of things, that people just wanting to have an alternative to the, you know, the type of culture that says, I don't know where this comes from, I'm not talking to the people that grew it, you know, and I don't even know what the nature of the, you know, poisons were that went into the ground in the first place. So Incredible Edible was about building self-belief and all that. It wasn't about growing food, although it's kind of become a food-growing movement. And interestingly enough, we've now got 110 communities all over the place doing exactly the same thing. Whether it's in the deepest Ilfracombe, where wonderful people, and Ilfracombe is a bit out of the way, wonderful, wonderful people, in the middle of that terrible storm from Incredible Edible, fed 40 households in Ilfracombe by going out there and doing all the many things that we all do in terms of sharing food, growing food, just preparing food for people, or whatever. In Lambeth, it's working really well. In Preston, they're doing amazing things. In Middlesbrough, they're doing great things. So all over the place, people are being given a chance in their own way. We're not policing it. In their own way, they're telling their stories. And tomorrow, if you come to the college, you'll start to hear some of those people and hear some of those stories. But the bottom line is, that was just the beginning of the understanding of the journey that we needed. That we actually could trust people. That actually, the system as it was, doing to people, could not continue to exist. Simply, it was bankrupt. So that by the ability to demonstrate that you can trust people, you started to not only build a sense in the community of self-worth, but in the professionals that serviced the community in respect. And that was one of the tricks that we learned. That sometimes there are so many people in the community that don't have respect for the professionals who create the frameworks of their lives, and so many times the people that create the frameworks of their lives have no respect for the community. And unless we start to make that circle more virtuous, we're never really going to be able to realise the potential we all have to build kinder lives. But the thing I really learned from doing that stuff for 10 years is you can't do it on your own. Statement of the blindingly obvious. We all think we're special and we all want to do something in the place that we call home. And we are special, and it is wonderful to have the place that we call home, but there are thousands of communities all over the place wanting to do the same thing, with the same gifts and the same passion, but we're not linking up effectively. So the question then is, how do we collaborate? How do we create the sort of critical mass that produced, 100 and odd years ago, that wonderful renaissance of self-belief that we call the Rochdale Pioneers, and from which came the cooperative movement? How do we believe in ourselves enough, as they believed in themselves, to know that we can change our own destiny and our own history? So thinking about that, and thinking, you know, we're not going to be precious about a name. Incredible Edible does this bit, and social farming does that bit, and the wonderful stuff that the Lard is doing in Preston does that bit. But what if we could find a way across a bigger spatial plane to unite people who share those same values about building a better tomorrow, but are using food in that process? So we're just being like laser-like in our focus. This isn't just about growers, it's about storytellers, it's about web designers, it's about all manner of skills, but food is our bag. How would we do that? And this is where the next 10 years, God willing, is going to take us. Because I know we love the Northern Powerhouse, but I prefer the Northern Greenhouse. So actually, what we thought was, good old George, yeah, I get that, imbalance and all the rest of it in the days when he was Chancellor. But actually, why do I want to stick and lift a broke southeastern model up to the north of England and give that to my kid and say, there you go, kid, it's going to be great, when I don't believe that for a second? So what if we actually showed that working collectively and collaboratively across every sector of our communities, across the north of England, we could actually create enough of a critical mass to start to shift those frameworks and those policies and those investment programs that are the lifeblood of how we live. Wherever you are, local government, prison service, education, universities, local authorities, private sector, voluntary groups, whatever. If you're using food, let's talk. Let's talk and let's see how we can share resources. Let's see how we can think collaboratively about our spend. Let's see how we can shift spaces by telling the same story irrespective of sector. What would that make it look like? Well, one interesting thing is that I was tapped on the shoulder by 2 local authorities, one Wigan and one Barnsley. And they said, oh, we love Incredible Edible. Come into our local authority. These are the chief execs of these authorities. Come into our local authority and work with our staff so that they can get out of people's way to be incredible. Come and work so that we can redefine how we do our markets, how we redefine our public spaces, how we rethink our skills agenda. Come and help us do that. Because what we know is local government can't do what it used to do. We all know that. But it can do something. And it can be the servant leader of tomorrow if we can work with our communities to show how that can happen. So we've been working with Wigan for 2.5 years with their deal programme, and it's mind-blowing. It's fabulous what they're actually doing, and they're only on the early slopes of this climb. Barnsley, oh my God, Barnsley are just totally amazing. They're so up for it. They are so focused on respect for the people in their communities who have been decimated with the issues of the past, the industrial issues around coal mining and God knows what of the past. And they are working again with us. So here we've got something. Can we create a model that stands on a stage and says to local government, do you know, you could all do this. And here's the savings you make, and here's the investments you make, and here's the difference you make to well-being and health and happiness in your communities. I'm not doing that. They're doing that. So that gives me hope. Then we've got local, we've got the NHS, bless their little cotton socks. Now the NHS know that they've got to take down their client base, haven't they? I mean, it's just not going to work otherwise, whatever Mrs. May might say. So fundamentally, the stuff we did in Topperden about creating an edible health centre has kind of lit a fire under the NHS nationally. So I'm banging on to people in the NHS about how we can create edible landscapes around every single hospital, every doctor's surgery, or every health centre. Because the health service has become an illness service. Everybody says that, it's so flippant, but it's the truth. And they want to go back to a time when they service the needs of those that cannot help themselves, but wish to inspire those that can to live happier, healthier lives. And walking through an edible hospital would be a good start. And teaching doctors how to grow and to cook would be another good start. And we're starting to work with people that are doing that. And I guess this is where my dream comes in. It seems crazy, but we can do it. Because there is no plan B. So suddenly we've got local authorities interested, we've got NHS interested, universities obviously are interested. Because they've got such issues around mental health with many of their students, and they've got, oodles of space to grow food in and to get active, so there's another possibility there. And then there's some sectoral things. What about procurement? I mean, I find this completely weird, but here we are in the north of England. We really, really want a sticky money economy. We really want great jobs. We know that we're going to have to grow a hell of a lot of more food in our urban centres, but nobody's bothering to teach our young people to be urban farmers because we're kind of obsessed with tick boxes. So how are we actually going to deal with that? Well, let's start to stimulate demand and then supply will follow. It's as simple as that. So if you actually add up the millions and millions and millions of pounds spent in public procurement in the north of England with Brakes Brothers et al., and I've nothing against Brakes Brothers, other than I'd rather they spent it with local farmers and local processors, local producers. If you started to say, okay, let's have a bit of a Concord Act stuff going on, a pledge, a deal, whatever, that says 10% each year you're going to spend more, and you're going to spend it in a local... We know it can be done. We know there are authorities that are doing it. But for some reason it slips between the cracks because it's a bit stressful in the day job. And to actually do this on top of it is a problem. So how do we work across those authorities like Preston, who want to do that, like Wigan, who want to do that, and how do we work a simpler model so that everybody can start to do this? And then how do we backfill that with the sorts of experience and apprenticeships opportunities so more people can benefit from that? And suddenly, what started as a little idea about people doing propaganda gardens in a town became something that challenged so many of the norms of our life. And ultimately, I guess that's the story of Incredible Edible. It's trying to create a new normal. And it's trying to create a new normal that challenges some of the ideas, like we don't have to spend the money in the way that we are spending it. We do not need more and more and more money. What we need is to bend the budget so that actually we deliver the value-driven society that we want. We actually don't need to scale stuff up, because scaling stuff up takes the human element out of it. We need to spread what we're doing, and we need to collaborate collectively, because each and every one of us has the power to believe and to effect something through their own small actions. So my first big dream with Incredible Edible is around Incredible North, and I see no reason whatsoever why we're not going to do that. My second big dream for the Northern Powerhouse is to redefine, with people like Robin, a new national park for the South Pennines. Except I don't want a national park. It's the last thing in the world I want. A park constrained with 2001 different rules about what you can't do is not where I'm coming from. But what I am interested in doing is, I live in the very heart of the South Pennines. Now, the South Pennines, there's a beautiful artist map over there on the table, if you've not already seen it. And this is with the Pennine Prospects hat on, not Incredible Edible. It's a beautiful map of this part of the world, which is not protected at a landscape scale by any special designations. It's got the dales in the north, it's got the peak in the south, it's got all manner of areas of outstanding natural beauty that have got all manner of protection around them, but nothing in the South Pennines. So if we are going to drive a coach and horses through the type of society that we actually want, where are you going to drive it through? You're going to drive it through the South Pennines. So we need to start to think creatively about what that wonderful landscape from Skipton to Marsden, from Bolton and Blackburn through to Huddersfield, Halifax and Bradford, that is the space of the South Pennines. And so in the same vein as we came up with the idea of, well, why don't we just create a model and why don't we just get people doing stuff around local food, we have created the idea that we're going to have a people's park for the South Pennines. We don't want it to be a park like the Dales. We want this to be the first socially purposed people's park in the country. And at a time when government is talking about the future of parks and landscapes, but it's only talking to the people who exist within the existing structure, we're kind of knocking on the door and saying, hey, do you want a new way of thinking about this? Because if you care about this wonderful environment and this wonderful landscape that we live in, and you care about the prosperity of the next generation within that park, then you'd better start thinking differently than the way that we've treated landscapes through our national parks, which has said stop as opposed to do. And what we want to do is to enable more people through their understanding, through their engagement, through their betterment, to understand they're not the only species on this planet that makes any that's about. Actually, without the rest of them, we're out. And without that wonderful ecosystem around us, we don't have an economy. So what are we going to do to square those circles of getting a landscape that we really are going to stand up and shout about instead of having sheds all over? What are we going to do about a planning system that's not delivering for the people, that isn't delivering enough green spaces, that is not delivering the type of quality environment that is right for our kids? What are we going to do about the decimation of some of our markets and our market towns when actually we have it within our power to reinvigorate those? And what are we going to do about getting more people out there physically active so that they are not the drain on the NHS and that they can have a laugh along the way? And what we're going to do is quite simple. We're going to create the People's Park of the South Pennines. They're going to absolutely adore it in the Northern Powerhouse. We're going to say this is the first for the nation, so just get out there and stand on the top balcony of the House of Commons and start to talk about something that is about the 21st century, not the 20th. And all these things are just about, hey, I've got an idea, what do you think? Shall we have a crack? And just doing it. And my experience has been, if you do it for long enough and you're noisy enough in telling the story, you meet the most amazing range of people who want to stand up to be counted next to you. And that has been the most wonderful gift that's been given me over the last 10 years. I have met the most amazing people who have walked on water to build a kinder world. but who were not given the opportunity to do that till suddenly the light went on their eye and they said, I've got a gift. People might not want it, but they can't stop me giving it. And that's all that we've done. So hopefully that kind of rounds off what we've been doing today, I think. For me, it's just amazing to hear so many stories. I'd love the Valley to work collaboratively, more effectively than perhaps it has done to date. We're not in competition. We are one people in one valley who have done some amazing things and can learn so much from so many other valleys all over the world. So, that's me done. Thank you for listening to me. It's an absolute joy to be able to know so many of you in here and to know that each and every one of us in this room is driven by a set of values that says the past is not delivering in a way that I want it to do. The future is up to me and mine, and I'm going to create something that's a damn sight more kinder. Thank you very much.